Hello, this video is just a quick explanation of what I call dynamic RD spawnerless. It's just an enhancement to the spawnerless blaze fight strategy, but it gets you way more mobs. It requires a little bit of extra concentration and is a bit more risky as there are more mobs, but I believe it will reduce fort splits significantly. The 5RD spawnerless strat, which is being shown in the background, to my knowledge was developed by twagz and others about 18 months ago. twagz had claimed that 5 was the optimal render distance. If the render distance was too low, there's not enough area for mobs to spawn at maximum capacity, and if it's too high, less mobs will spawn closer to you. However, I'll be explaining how this can be done more optimally. The principle is that you change your render distance based on how many mobs are counted towards the mob cap in the hostile mob category. In order to know how many mobs are counted towards the mob cap, we'll be using the M value on the debug screen. It's located in the bottom left. Now I'll be analyzing and going through a short clip of myself doing dynamic render distance spawnerless in an actual seed, so I'll break down exactly what I do. The first thing, as soon as you approach the fort, you want to lower to 6 render distance. This is because you're going to be freezing mobs, you're going to be attempting to spawn in as many mobs in that 6th ring of chunks around you. Well, it's actually the 5th ring of chunks around you if you don't include the chunk you're standing in. So you're going to be freezing mobs there, and they're unloaded, so they can't despawn. Then you're going to lower to 5, so that freezes the mobs, and it also frees up a little bit of the mob cap because they're not in it anymore. Now is where the dynamic part begins, because you're checking, you should be checking your debug for the M value. If it's less than 55, you should be decreasing your render distance. Usually, after about 4 or 5 seconds, it's going to be greater than 55, or rather, pretty high, somewhere in the 60s. So you want to be prepared to lower your RD to 4 as soon as you're entering the fort, or rather after you lower to 5. So I render to 4 without even checking, because this is really mostly SSD. So it's at 55. Anywhere between 55 and 65 is comfortable. So I saw that it went up to about 65. Let's see, I'll rewatch it. It went up to about 65, and it's above 65 now, so I'm ready to lower it. Now the important thing is, even though it may go above 65 at this point, I'm not going to lower to 2 render distance. Now the reason is, when you're on 2 render distance and 3 render distance, there's the same amount of chunks that mobs are counted towards the cap in. It's a 7 by 7, I believe. However, there's more chunks that mobs can spawn in when you're on 3 render distance, so it's a win-win situation, I guess. If you're on 3 render distance, there's no reason you should be on 2 render distance except to maybe unload a gas. And I get really lucky with my rates here, but regardless, I did a pretty good job of showcasing, at least in my opinion, dynamic render distance strats, and I covered all the major aspects of it.